I can't count how often I have fallen into conversation in these years about the heavy complexity that is on the shoulders of the young of our species, humans growing up in this time. I worry and resist the characterization of them as a lost generation. I believe that with everything before us, from the digital revolution and AI to the ecological and societal remaking that are already upon us, they have wisdom and instincts in their bones that will be essential if we are all to flourish and not merely survive this century. I also feel deeply as a person who has moved into the eldering time of my life that they need and deserve accompaniment. So I immediately accepted an invitation last November of 2024 to an event hosted at Georgetown University on the matter of being young in America. I was especially excited when Jason Reynolds agreed to be part of this. The first conversation I had with Jason in 2020 imprinted me deeply. There's a link to that in the show notes, and I encourage you to listen. He is wise beyond his years. He's now in his early 40s. As an author and the former ambassador for young people's literature, Jason brings a listening ear and a deep capacity for joy and for love to his offerings and interactions with children, adolescents, and young adults in this world of ours. Jason himself didn't pick up a book to read until he was a teenager. His books, which often speak to the experience of children of color, especially boys, have been great gifts to educators and librarians and his readers themselves. So Jason and I were joined at Georgetown by a current student there, Kessley Janvier. She too is a force of nature, and you will hear about her various passions and projects in the course of this conversation. But what happens in our encounter, that including me, spans generations from the 20s to the 40s to the 60s, and extended out to a room of people of all ages and walks of life. It's as much about who we will be and how we will be as what we have before us to do, each in our own lives. Nothing is resolved here or summed up, but my perspective on what it means to be young in America is refreshed and emboldened, complicated in good ways, and I hope it might have that effect for you too. I'm Krista Tippett, and this is On Being. This event was hosted by the Georgetown University Collaborative on Global Children's Issues and its executive director, Gillian Huebner. I'm so grateful to be here, to be at Georgetown for this very specific invitation. And yes, I've known Gillian since we were of different generations and very different generations than we are in now. And that is so fascinating. And to keep knowing each other across time, and then at this juncture, to find a way to be working together, to be playing together. And I'm so happy to be introduced to Kessley. And Jason, I met it was May or June of 2020, and we were both learning how to do an interview in our homes. And it was really one of the most important conversations I had in all those years. And so it's a thrill to actually meet you in the flesh, in the old-fashioned flesh.
Same.
And to have a conversation at this point. Because I guess I'm up here too, in my generation, right? And how old are you, Kessley?
I am 21.
21, and Jason was still in his 30s when I talked to him before, and now he's 40. And I just turned 64, which the Beatles turned into an age that no one wants to become. And I just got to tell you, it's like they didn't, it's changed or they didn't get it right, because it's great. But we really have different realities and we have had such a different view of the world and of what it means to be human because of this world we've been born into and what we've experienced. One thing I want to bring with me that I've learned also sitting at the feet of elders in my life of conversation over the last 20 years is some of the things I've learned and some of the way I've learned to look out at the world, and one of them is to really try to settle into a long view of time and of how change happens. And that's really countercultural, but I want us to do that tonight, work with a spacious view of time. Jason, let's start with you. How is your heart?
Well, today?
Yeah, today, right now.
Today it's encouraged and exhausted. I think it always sort of sits between multiple spaces, and usually those spaces are antithetical in certain ways, or either one is causing the other, right? So I feel hopeful and I feel encouraged, but to feel that way requires effort on my part, which is exhausting in this particular moment. I also got a lot of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
Which is for my therapist and not for y'all, but I got like stuff. So that's where I am.
Okay, thank you. Kessley, how's your heart today?
Similarly exhausted. I think it's constantly in a state of, I hope for better, I wish for better, and I don't see it. And to be in a state of constantly being let down is frustrating, but hope's an exercise. But at the same time, I feel like everything is so new and so fun being young, and I say this outside of spaces like this. I don't know, I feel like it grows. I'm grateful for my friends.
Mm-hmm. I actually think that's been true a long time, that there's this idea that that these are the greatest years of your life, and you're supposed to be having so much fun, and it's complicated.
They keep saying that, and I really struggle to see how my life's gonna get better after I graduate, because I keep telling, every morning I call my mom and I'm like, after this, I'm gonna have to get a job and pay rent, and then pay back my loans and cook, and I just don't feel like life is gonna get any better than having my parents pay all my expenses right now.
Okay. We can't solve all those problems for you tonight. You will get all of that done. So Jason, I sense, because one of the books you've written more recently is Ain't Burned All the Bright, which was also about a young person's experience of pandemic. And I wonder if you've also shared my sense that this thing happened to all of us, and it's still absolutely rolling around our bodies, and we don't know how to do grief in this country to begin with, and we haven't even begun to metabolize it, and yet we just want to pretend like it's over. And so I wonder, you dedicated that book to, which is an incredible book. It's also, you did it together with an old friend who is an artist. Mm-hmm. It's only really 3 sentences. You dedicated it for everyone we lost and everything we learned in the strangest year of our lives, 2020. You said, because we spoke right after George Floyd was murdered, and you said, I've talked sometimes about feeling like we have a distressed nervous system at a species level, which explains why it's not just a crisis in our country, right? This is a global, this thing is playing itself out all over the world. You said it's like all of 2020 has been an attack on the respiratory system, emotionally, the emotional respiratory system, mental respiratory system, social respiratory system, physical respiratory system, the spiritual respiratory system.
Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like to me. Everybody was being strangled in every direction. We were all searching for our oxygen masks in different ways. Yeah. And we were forced to sort of figure out what that meant for us. Some of us understood that meant getting in the street and protest. Some of us understood that meant calling your pod. Remember, we had pods, right? You call your friends over and share a glass of wine and bask in human touch, even with only 1 or 2 people. I think, honestly, Krista, I learned a lot during that time. I learned that once we were forced to use our machines, we realized the value of human touch. I think as an older millennial, I think my generation and down desperately needed to re-engage with that idea that the machines, we love them and we spend so much time on them until we have no choice but to. And then we were begging for a hug, begging for a handhold, right? Anything to be in the presence and to feel the presence of a human body, right? Like skin thirst, right? Like this idea that we were all starving for some sort of human interaction. And I also learned what happens when social protest is a convenience. George Floyd was a fascinating moment in American history because it was the perfect storm for a global movement. But if the storm is perfect, then the protest is flimsy. If no one has to go to work and no one has a job to lose, then everyone can hit the street and be a part of something that feels life-affirming in the midst of tremendous devastation. Right. A single man becomes a totem, we all gather around, and because we have nothing else to do, the world is on board until your job calls you back, until the schools are reopened, until your bills have resumed and your mortgage is due. And then you realize, unfortunately, I can't be a part of a thing that puts my livelihood at risk. My self-interest will always take precedent, which is human. But there's much to learn that if your fight for change is convenient, then it's not a fight. Right? And I think what the young people know, what drives so many of us up the wall, is that they want to make your life inconvenient and uncomfortable so that we collectively might just grow. And I wonder if when this happens again, what we'll see, if we'll see anything. I mean, we know what's going on in all the universities and in corporations and, all of the sort of fuss and talk about what we were going to do to shake up the culture. And, that's over. Yeah. It's been divested from. And so these are the things that I'm constantly thinking about. It's like, how do you create something sustainable? How do we have cultural shift in the zeitgeist? How do we change the social psyche, right? Is that even a goal? Could that even be a goal? Should it be a goal? Should we just attack the law or should we attack the psyche of society? I'm not exactly sure of the answer. I do know that I don't mind if you hate me. I just don't need or want, or it shouldn't be possible for your hate to get in the way of my life, right? And trying to suss out, like, what do we want to kumbaya, or do I want to be able to live freely despite what you think of me, right? These are like, that's where I am, what I mean? That's what the pandemic really gave me, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. What are you thinking when you listen to that? How's it landing in your experience?
I think that if I had to find words for what was wrong with George Floyd's summer or 2020, that would be it. I think organizing on campus really just embodies that everybody wants to be involved until it's inconvenient. Everyone wants to be on the board and have the flashy position, but nobody wants to come to the organizing meeting at 10 o'clock at night. Everyone wants to post the graphic on Instagram, but misses the march. I think I 100% agree, and I question. I think when I first got to Georgetown, in the aftermath of that, I felt it was all very disingenuous. I grew up reading Baldwin. I love Coates, right? Nowhere in the Baldwin, nowhere in the Coates, nowhere in the Toni Morrison did it say and all the white people came to the march, right? And then I got here, and then I've been organizing now for 3.5 years here, and it's clear, everyone wants to do it until they got a paper. And as much as I understand the balance of everyone's here to learn and you gotta do your papers to graduate and you gotta, go be on the board of that flashy club. I think it falls really flat when it's I'm the one with the lived reality of whatever we're protesting for, and you're the one who gets to show up when you have a free hour.
Yeah.
Jason, I don't know if you remember this, but when I interviewed you, and it was like the weeks after, right?
Yeah.
And it was in Minneapolis where I was. It was very intense and felt really close, like physically close and emotionally close. And I remember I was saying to you that I was uncomfortable with like the call to anti-racism because it felt to me like a call to a negative, like what we shouldn't be.
I remember we talked
and
about
you
that.
set me straight. And you were like, okay, fine, you're having trouble with that language.
I remember. Yeah.
You're like, calm down.
Yeah.
And you said to me, and I have absolutely lived with this since then. So we had that really good back and forth where you set me straight. And then you said, look, this is what anti-racism is. Anti-racism is this muscle that has to be developed. And it's simply the muscle that says that humans are human. That's it. It's the one that says, I love you because you are you, period. That's all. And if we can figure out how to do that, and it feels so simple. This is why racism has been the greatest hoax ever played on humans. It's the greatest hoax ever because that element of I love you because you are you should be the most human thing we know. It should be a natural thing to say, look, I love you because you remind me more of myself than not. I think like my experience being a white person in Minneapolis, different generation, all of this, was I thought, like it was clear to me that the protests weren't the reckoning. The protests were important for all kinds of reasons, but they weren't the work. And I thought, we'll get to the work. And I meant white people as well, also among themselves.
Sure.
And then so many other things happened, right? And it just went on. And as you say, it didn't happen. And this didn't happen. Like I have so much grief about, and the we is a big word, and I'm using it to include white people, but all of us, like we collectively did not get to what we were really called to, and we didn't get to it yet, right? I want to say yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's a destination. I think that's dangerous.
Yeah.
To assume that look, here's what I say. I mean, from a very base level, everybody in here hears this child, right? There is a child in the room. We all hear the child, right? Yes? So the thing that's interesting about the child's, that sound that we all are hearing over and over again, is that my belief is that sound specifically has like the resonant frequency for all humanity. And what I mean is, if there is a sound, right? If we think about resonant frequency, which means basically is there something that resonates enough to something else that can cause chemical change in the sort of matter, right? If a wind hits a certain frequency at a particular sort of, at a particular decibel, it can topple a bridge. This is what engineers know when they're building bridges, right? This has happened in history before. This is why the opera singer can break the glass, right? This is all of these sort of scientific techniques that people use, and it's called resonant frequency. I'm always thinking about, is there a resonant frequency for humanity? Could there be a single sound that all humanity feels the same about? That sound, I believe, is the sound that everybody in here, when they hear that sound, the cooing of a child, feels the same thing. No matter how mean you are, no matter what race you are, no matter your sexual orientation, your religious beliefs, none of it matters. We don't even know what race the child is. We don't know the gender of the child, sex and gender of the child. We don't know what the child looked like, if the baby bald-headed or not. We don't know nothing about this child. And it doesn't matter because that sound, for some reason, connects us all. Now, my theory on where we are in terms of anti-racism and all of that, it's less about sort of thinking about, and I hated that I used the word love because you ain't got to love me, but respect, right? Respect me. I respect you because you are you. And the reason I do is because that connects us. Whatever that sound is, whatever that energy is in me and is in you. And right, this is my version of namaste. Right? And so, and I think if we were just to keep that in mind in general, then perhaps we could start to move forward. I'm not actually expecting, or was not expecting white folks to hit the switch. there wasn't a black person in America expecting y'all to hit the switch. Just so y'all know, like we weren't expecting y'all to hit the switch. What I am hoping and what I am encouraged by is that there are more white folks. Not all, because that's never going to be a thing. Not all of us, by the way, are on board. But there are more white folks who are considering themselves in the spaces in which they move, who are considering themselves and their voices in the conversation in which they're having, who are asking more questions instead of making more declarations. It doesn't mean that we still aren't dealing with what we're dealing with, but I think that it is necessary for all of us, but specifically white folks who are trying to engage with conversations around race, to realize this is something, in the same way that I have to deal with misogyny, in the same way that misogyny lives in my body. It's calcified in my psyche, born and raised in a misogynistic system. And in order for me to sort of manage this thing that I was born in, an illness that I was born and raised with, I have to be able to constantly be engaged with it so that I can catch it and be less harmful, right? I'm not expecting anybody to suddenly be changed, but I am hoping that you'll be changing and thinking about, like, man, this thing is in me, these biases are in me, whether I know it or not. Let me try to be more aware and catch myself and not be ashamed. We don't want to have to go through all the guilt and the this and the that, because it just holds up ties. It don't help nobody, right? If you mess up, I messed up. I'd like to learn a little more. I got some questions. And if the black person you're talking to say, I don't really have time to teach you enough, and then you go ahead and take that on the chin and you go to the library and you do all the extra, like Kessley's saying, the extra work, right? If you really, truly want to be better, just like I am trying to do as a person who identifies as a man, in the same way that people who have more money should be working on in terms of class issues in this country, in the same way that able-bodied people should be thinking about the disabled and differently able folks around them, in the same way that neurotypical people should be thinking about this is just about remembering that sound. It ain't that deep to me. If that sound makes you feel something, then work to be a better person, because the person that you're talking to is affected by the same sound. That's it, you know?
You both have spoken about the criticism that comes, especially to your generation and younger generations, of being so hypersensitive. And yet there's so much actually to be sensitive, right? There's so much to be sensitized to. There's also, again, something we don't talk about that is in our bodies is this, that our planet is in distress and that we are of it. It is the ground we stand on and the air we breathe. And I think that younger people being born now somehow are feeling that at a cellular level, like something evolutionary is happening. I don't know, to this, Kessley, I think, like, how would you talk about this, this sensitization that, that it is to be alive now at your age? How do you think about that? And I don't want you to have to explain it, but I think that there's a lack of comprehension and maybe also compassion towards it.
I think it comes from, like, my friends and I were actually just having this conversation like last week. We were like, are we all depressed? Are we all anxious? Do we all have ADHD? Or are we not supposed to live under capitalism? I mean, you're laughing, but it's not funny. Like, it's not funny. It's not funny. I think about this all the time. I think about all the things that we've internalized as kind of personal failures that are the things that, like, people will say that are making us more sensitive. Like, I hear a lot that, like, people don't like their Gen Z coworkers because they like to leave at 5 o'clock. Okay, but, like, why should we be there after 5 anyways? Like, that's the question of the day. I feel like within my peer group, the sensitization, or like what's called a sensitization, is not as much a sensitization as like a rejection of, like, just because, like, you live this way doesn't mean I'm going to. The climate is changing. I am watching that happen, like, and degrade in front of my face. I'm watching my peers like kind of degrade somehow, not like in places where I feel like they should be at their prime. And I think it's not because like we're any like stupider than any past generations or we're any more sensitive. I think it's because like we're just more aware. And I think with awareness and with information comes, it's the other side of that, of like, are you just gonna like take it? There are lots of things that like I wouldn't have verbiage for if I didn't read. Or there's things I wouldn't be aware of if I didn't have social media. And it's like, would my life be better if I didn't know about these things and have names for them? Or would they just be affecting me and I would just be carrying on as if it was my fault? Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm more sensitive. I think I'm more inclined to like not take BS just because like my parents took it or my grandparents took it.
Right.
Like I'm not just gonna swallow it. I truly am my soul, and maybe I'm naive, but I think being naive is a decent thing. Maybe I'm naive in believing that like the world does not have to be the way it is, but like I'm not just gonna like swallow it. Mm-hmm. Like life is too short. Like I'm not gonna suffer.
I feel like the way, the mental health crisis, the way it gets spoken about, as you said, there's just something so wrong with it, and there's something so, it's all about diagnosing dysfunction, and there's no, I don't experience a capacity to actually be asking what health is, right? And what health there might be in this, and what health might look like, and what vitality, talking to young people or talking about young people being mentally unhealthy and not having any kind of vocabulary or conversation about flourishing. And how do we bring that about, right? To the extent that we're talking about it, it's how do we treat it, but not what do we want to live into?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about like community, and my roommate actually like just left like a second ago, but my roommate and I, the conversation we have at least once a week is nobody has community anymore. People don't care about their neighbors. It's always like it takes a village, but nobody wants to be the village, or this, that, and the other. And we looked at the election results and we were like, point blank, people don't care about their neighbors, right? That's the one big takeaway that I got from it. And we've become...
So wait, say some more about that.
I mean, I know we didn't want to talk too much about the election, but...
No, I know, but that people don't care about their neighbors, that's the takeaway.
That was my takeaway. People don't care about their neighbors because I felt like there were a lot of people, or I was seeing at least what I was consuming, so I will watch like MSNBC and CNN, sometimes NBC if I'm like bored. But like I was seeing like they were like interviewing voters and they were talking to undecided voters, and there was this retired couple on The Daily like a few weeks ago, and they said something like, I can't remember what the host asked them, but they asked them about Kamala Harris's housing like plan. And like it was like giving $25,000 to like new like first-time home buyers. And the reporter said something along the lines of like, does this change your opinion? And the retired lady was like, well, no, because like I already own a house. And I was like, okay, well, good for you. We don't all. And it was to me like what I witnessed when I saw how much of the country went red. And I was seeing people saying things like, it was about the economy, the grocery prices are too high, and like, I don't have a job, and like, I'm not here to like minimize people's economic woes, but to vote for somebody that is going to harm vast numbers of other people because you feel like your economic situation is so dire that you don't care about what happens to other people, that to me is like a rejection of like caring about your neighbors. And I'm gonna sit here and say like, oh, people don't care about their neighbors, people don't care about your neighbors. And like, my friends know that like I have one-sided beef with our neighbors because they put their trash out on the wrong day, right? So like here I am, like I will tell you like people don't care about their neighbors enough, but at the same time, like I have my petty squabbles with my neighbors, but at the end of the day, I was not going to sell them out over, grocery prices. But at the same time, like I also should be clear that like I don't buy all my own groceries right now, so like grocery prices wasn't the highest list all my issue things I was voting on, but like that's what I mean when I feel like people are, at the end of the day, like it just didn't make sense to me that you would say like, or somebody would look in a camera too and like admit this. Basically like, who cares about women's right to choose? Like, he said that he's gonna put the grocery prices down. How? I don't know, who cares? But like, let's just sell everybody else down the river. That to me is a rejection of caring about your neighbors, like literally. Mm-hmm.
This exercise that we watched before, the inner shoes, is about seeing and hearing each other, hearing someone very different. And it gets at this root, this absolutely primal need and desire we all have to be seen and heard. And I think, Jason, that's like what you bring to young people, what you're always looking for. And I think, what you just described is one expression of that not being in the fabric of how we live, seeing and hearing each other. And it seems to me also that your generation, that younger generations are really begging for that, to be seen.
I think we started off talking about the pandemic, and I think the thing that personally I feel like I lost during the pandemic was the opportunity to have community when I needed it, and community of my age mates. I love my parents, but we are not age mates. And I think a lot about building and cultivating community as I'm becoming an adult, and I become more grateful for the people who actively choose to be a part of mine. But at the end of the day, to me, living in a country is a kind of a really crappy group project. And we have to care about each other enough to not just to show up for each other when we have no responsibilities, but to show up for each other when it's hard. One of my good friends lives I want to say 25 minutes away, and the Uber is consistently between $17 and $45, right? And that's not cheap, and they will tell you that I complain every week about, you guys never come to my house. But to me, if my friends needed me to show up, that's $35 that I wouldn't miss, because those are my people and they would show up for me. But it's the being able to do that when, I know I have papers due, but my friend just got off a conversation that they really need somebody to show up. I will be there. And we need to extend this care that we all care about the people that we know. We all love our families and love our friends, but it's those aren't the people that I'm concerned that we don't care about. I'm concerned we don't care about the people who are outside of that.
Right. Jason, one thing you've said is that the key to connection across difference, across generational difference, but I think difference, just the mystery of another human being. These words you've used, humility, intimacy, and gratitude. And that statement is not irrelevant to the state of American democracy or American culture, as you just described it, Kessley.
Nah. It's interesting. I just feel like it's if respect could be codified, right? If love and respect and acceptance could be codified, that would be the code, right? That would be sort of the equation. Humility, intimacy, and gratitude. I actually think it's what causes division between the generations, not sort of leading with these things. I think it's the way we connect, but I also think without them there is great chasms between us, right?
Right.
And how it works, at least for me in my own life, is I think you step into any space with a certain level of humility, You step into any engagement with a certain level of humility. And you know, humility now has like a bad, I don't know if you guys, but humility now has like a weird bad rap, which is strange. I don't know, people are like, man, humility it's about degrading yourself and I'm like, no, it's not. You're denigrating yourself, you're making yourself small. And it's like, it's not, that's not what's happening. If you were to look at the original definition of the word condescension, for instance, right? Condescension originally was about the king coming down, talking to all of the people who lived in the town, but not as the king, right? He would basically come down and say, like, I am now one of you. And of course, it's like, yeah, but we know you're gonna go back up the hill to be the king. But back then, condescension was seen as a level of respect for the people in which the king was talking to. Over time, the definition becomes negatively connoted, and it's a different thing. I think with humility, it's a similar thing. It doesn't mean we have any sort of hierarchies in terms of kings and quote unquote kings and all this, that, and the third, but it does mean that if I'm stepping into a space with someone that I do not know, or someone that I do know, I think I should lead with less answers and more questions.
Right.
I think what young people have an issue with when it comes to us, and I'm older millennial and on up, is that we come in with all the answers. And we're not asking enough questions. And I think the issues that we have with them are the same. That we're upset that they're not asking more questions, right?
Right,
and
right.
perhaps they don't feel safe enough because we haven't set the tone to sort of create space to say, look, this is a space that you can go ahead and throw this up against the wall. You can say what you need to say. You can ask me some questions. We can create some sort of discourse. If I allow for the questions by asking questions, because you are only interesting if you are interested, right? So if I like lead off with these questions, then maybe you'll know that I actually do care about you and I'm interested to hear what you have to say. And what happens from that is you build intimacy, because intimacy can't be a one-sided thing.
Right.
Right? Anyone who studied communication, I was a communications major for 2 months when I was in college. Because I was like, I don't know what this is about. This is an everything major, right? So I was like a communications major for 2 months. And one of the classes that I was taking, they were talking about, specifically talking about intimacy, how to build intimacy. And they were saying how like it's simply just the matter of like reciprocal engagement, which means for young people, you got all these old heads, right, coming to them and saying, look, tell me what's wrong. Tell me about this. Tell me about what you're going on. Why are you so angry? Why you on meds? Why you want to burn down capitalism? Right? It's all of this stuff that we come to them and they looking at us like, why would I tell you? Who are you? I don't know you. You've not engaged in my life. You ain't asked me you've never told me anything. I don't know anything about you, but because you're my teacher or because you got 25, 35, 40 years on me, you believe that I owe you an answer, though you haven't given me any reason to give you one. We have no intimacy. Right. And then I think lastly, I just think that the world could do with some more gratitude. I think we really undervalue each other as humans. I think that it doesn't matter what you feel about me. It's interesting listening to Kessley speak because I'm thinking about myself at 21. And it's cool to hear like, all right, these are the wheels that are turning for this young person as they suss out their own futures and the futures of their community, right? And I think in these moments, instead of people in the audience or any of us sort of judging that, we should extend some gratitude, right? Because without Kessley, then the future is not there. Whatever that future looks like, it doesn't exist if there's not a Kessley, if there's not Kessley's imagination, Kessley's anger and frustration, Kessley's ideas, right? How they will inevitably change, right? As she continues to learn and grow and change and experience and live, right? Like ours continues to do. Without a Kessley, it's over for us. So instead of judging and instead of sort of chastising, we should probably first say thank you in the same way that I do every time I see my elderly mother. I owe her gratitude too. It goes both ways, right? We have to give it to them too. Mm-hmm. And I think those three tenets, for me in my life, has created healthy relationships across generations that I hope I'll be able to continue to nurture and grow.
Mm-hmm. Kessley, aside from family, do you have friendships or relationships of intimacy with with older people?
Yes, one of my parents' friends, I think I hang out with her more than my parents do. My dad last year was quite upset to know that he had not been invited to her birthday party, but that I had. But what started out like very much as mentorship kind of, I don't want to say like grew, but like just changed into like, I like being around this person. This person thinks I have inherent value, and she's not my mom, so she doesn't like have to think I'm cool.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I have like one. And then I have snippets of like older people in my life who know me very well, not necessarily in the ways that my parents know me. Because I think there is a tendency for our parents to think that they know us the best. And my parents know me quite well. I'm an open book, but like at the same time, different people bring different spaces. There are things I would talk to my mom about that I would never bring up with my roommate. There are things I'd bring up with my roommate that I'd never tell my reverend about, right? Like different people, different things, but yes.
Jason, I want to find something I wrote down that you wrote about curiosity, because it was very beautiful. And let's see. Okay. This is one of the things you said to me in 2020. You know, when you talk about, Kessley, when you talk about, I mean, I think when I talk about the wisdom of certain stages of life, the world moves forward always, and new things happen because someone imagines something that does not now exist, and that in the beginning most people don't believe, laugh at. Everything new that has come into the world, everything that's been invented, everything that we later call progress, or change, or a movement, right? Or revolution, or transformation, or healing. Somebody believed it could happen when most people didn't. I mean, you talk about this, I think the power of the human imagination. We so don't take that in.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I actually think it's the first thing that goes. Right, I think it's zapped super early on. You know, I think school. You know, I got love for the academy, but it's an imagination killer. Starting young. I mean, like if you were to ask your average like 6-year-old, if any of you got little kids at home, ask your average 5 or 6-year-old, like if you could have any meal, any possible meal, what would it be? They would create the strangest concoction of foods that you would believe don't go together, right? And then if you ask your 13-year-old, they'd say pizza. And what has happened in a 5-year span is the killing of imagination, right? And I think, so the question then becomes, well, how do we keep imagination stoked? And I think the way to keep imagination stoked is to live a curious life.
Right.
I think curiosity is what feeds our imaginations. The issue is that over time, we're told that our curiosity should be muzzled. Kids are told really young that there are such things as inappropriate questions, right? Every time I go to a school, there's some kid in the crowd who is like, yo, my question is, how much money you make? And then you have all these adults who are like, no. And I say to the adults, no, we're not gonna stifle a child's curiosity. It's an honest question. And for kids coming from particular neighborhoods who know how much LeBron James is making, who know how much their favorite rappers are making, or at least they think they do, who knows, like think about that. And then they ask me, and there's an opportunity to have a narrative shift, you shut it down. Because to you, this is inappropriate, right? There's some sort of social contract that we all adhere to that says that this is of poor taste. That's a child. You don't get to ask me, but a 6-year-old, a 15-year-old, of course. Go for it, right? Because that curiosity is what continues to fuel something inside. It's no different than when I meet all the young folks. So I'm so curious to know what skibbity is. These little kids, and no one has been able, and you know what's wild is no one's been able to explain it to me, which makes me like it more, right? I'm like, they're like, yeah, it's like, you know, it's skibbity. And I'm like, well, what is it? They're like, skibbity is what it is, right? And I think to myself, like, word, like I like that. I like the abstraction of language and the fact that all of you know what it is and how to use it. To me, that's magic.
Right.
If you lose that, if you lose the part of you, and this is for you, I mean this, Kessley, if I'm not here to tell you anything because you got your own path. But if I could tell you anything, just one thing, is that the world is heavy on you. Please, please, please don't lose that part. Honestly, the world is heavy, and you know it's heavy. If there was one thing I wish somebody would have told me is that, yeah, at some point we get a little too old to be childish, but we never get too old to be childlike. And if you could hold on to some of that stuff, I think that the world you want to see, it continues to sort of spark in the mind, right? If not, by 30, things dim down. It's really hard to change the world after 30 years old, right? This is a famous quote. Tupac was famous for saying this, right? And the reason why is because the stakes get real high. Things, for some reason, begin to change developmentally. So if you can stay childlike, then your imagination will continue to swirl, and we might actually have a shot at doing the things that you and your friends and your generation want to see done. That's all I'm gonna offer you, though, because I know how y'all be. Don't be telling me what to do. That's all I got for you.
I got a couple of questions that were submitted at the beginning. Just a few. So here's a question. How can we find a sense of doing enough in these times for good? Kind of hear you saying that that's not the question for you. Or is it?
I don't know if I'm the person to ask, because my answer generally is we're probably not doing enough.
Yeah.
And I have to be told, I would say on a monthly basis, to calm down. There are only 24 hours in a day. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I would say we're not learning enough.
But when I say I don't think it's your question, I mean, you are pushing yourself, right? Like you are throwing yourself into this, but I don't think your question is, am I doing enough?
I am, every day.
That's the question. That's the question.
Yeah. I worry if, I was NAACP president for an entire year on campus. The entire year, you could pick anybody off the board of NAACP from last year. They would have told you that I didn't think I was a good enough president the whole year. And that I didn't think our org was meeting the needs on campus, or I didn't think we were meeting the needs off campus, or there's always something that can be done. I just also live with the knowledge that the systems we live in took at least 400 years to build. They're not going to go away overnight.
Yeah, good.
And they're not going to go away from me, but I also worry a lot about the fact that there are a lot of people who are better situated to be doing work that aren't doing it.
You do so much. Your stuff gets published, so I know exactly how much you do.
Yeah, but for me, it's different. I feel the question is an interesting question. I just look at it differently, right? The question that I ask myself every day is, am I doing enough for me? Am I doing enough to take care of myself?
Yeah.
Things change. I remember just throwing my body at this thing. I mean, I built this in community, right? And no one just becomes, right? I built this with a bunch of people who were supporting me when I was 21 years old. I got into this industry and knew what I wanted to do and started to sort of chip away at it with a group of people, making sure that I might have a fair shot. But the motor is so loud when I was that age, because I knew that in order for me to make this dream come true, I had to throw everything I had at it. But what happens with that is you pathologize that kind of ethic. And then you start to sort of create virtue around workaholism and around sort of savior mentality and around, right? It's like this thing now that it's really hard to turn off. So I asked myself the question. I mean, this is me, I'm highly therapized. You know what I mean? Had therapy today, got it again in 2 days. Right? And it's important for me because I don't have a lot of outlets to get it out, right? Yeah. And I carve out time, even for that hour, just as time where I'm not doing this other thing. I need, right? It's so am I doing enough for me, to take care of me, to love me? Never. Working on it. Been working on it for a long time. Gonna keep working on it, right? Am I doing enough in terms of working on behalf of the folks that I love and care about, working on behalf of a more equitable world, so forth and so on? I'm giving it my best shot. I'm doing my best, right? Like, and also I'm at a point in my life now, I know I don't have to do it all. There's Kessley and a bunch of other people, right? Like, I don't have to do all of the work. I don't have to, you know what I mean? That's not my goal. It's not my job. My job is to make sure that I take care of my square, that I change my square, and that my square changes their squares, right? And right, but I don't have, my cape been off a long time ago. I don't have that anymore. Now it's me being intentional and loving and honest about the work that I can do. And then loving myself real hard so that I might have the energy to love all the people that I sort of come in contact with along the way.
And I think that kind of wisdom definitely comes with time.
Yeah.
But I will say something that actually really gives me hope about new generations, both of your generations, is especially in the world of activism and organizing, is an like why do you leave? Why do you not have to stay at the office until you're 5? Because you're committed to a life where you're not constantly driving into exhaustion, right? Like, you are committed to a life where you stay healthy and whole. And I feel like there's this equation of joy as a human birthright, not as a privilege, as fuel, as even fuel for the fight, as fuel for like something that you have to return to again and again, if all these work is the work of the rest of our lifetimes. And also the community that you talk about, that's not optional, right? Like, that's vitality, right? Like, that's staying whole. That's new. There's a long tradition of activism that wears itself out in exhaustion and then cynicism.
Yeah, buddy.
Do you and your friends talk about this? Yeah, I've said on other stages before that my friend group specifically has been known to talk about movement politics at the dinner table, rambunctiously, I might add. But I think what keeps us going is checking each other of no, you actually can't take that other thing on, or I don't recommend it. Yeah. No, you are not Superwoman. You're not going to do that. Did you take your medication today? That's a big one. Comes up too often for adults, But it's this idea of we have to keep each other safe, because at the end of the day, the kind of forces I would say that we're fighting against are not going to do that. Even outside of activism, even in academia, my roommate and I have to check each other of hey, that professor you're writing that paper for right now, she is asleep in her bed with her husband. Go home. Do not stay at the library all night. You will be all right, right? You don't get to see the things you're building if you're dead. And we keep each other from driving into the ground.
Can you how? Because there are probably adults in here who are then how are they getting their grades in, right? Can you talk a bit about doing it that way without sacrificing whatever the goal is?
Yeah, you can have boundaries and achievement. I think that's something I had to learn. I think to some degree it comes with discipline of, no, I cannot go out on this night if I'm going to do this thing and this thing in the same day, right? The thing that young adulthood has forced me to learn, the thing that college has forced me to learn, is that everything's a sacrifice all the time. And you will never feel like you're doing anything 100%. Something is near constantly being half-assed. And what's important as a student activist is making sure the thing that's not being half-assed is school, right? But there are strategic choices that I have to make of I love hot yoga, I really do. I cannot go to hot yoga on a Monday because I will not get to where I need to be on time. But hot yoga is something that needs to stay in my mix and my rotation, because if I don't go, I will not want to go to class. Right. But there's also the trade-off of doing the things that I want to do versus the things I have to do, which is a thing. But I would say my roommate's a better example than me. obviously she's left, so I can't even shout her out, but my roommate like is like gonna graduate summa cum laude, on honor roll, and still has a social life.
Right.
Her and I really like going to the grocery store, so we still get to go to the grocery store like pretty often for extended periods of time, right? Like, you can have all these things. There's just some things you're gonna miss out on, but you have to choose, like, is this something that I will like be able to live with missing out on? And like, my grades is not the thing that can slip, because I have to be accountable, like, A, because I need to graduate, and B, because like my parents, and I have brothers, so I don't want them to think that like failing is okay. But like, I don't get to go to every event anymore. I don't live on campus anymore. It is what it is.
There's a question about turning away from the news and wanting to stay informed and also maintain sanity. I think, a lot of hand-wringing that happens about younger generations is about social media, and social media being the place where information is happening, but social media also, right, there's a lot of dire analysis of what it's done to you. Well, it's done to us, but what it's done to you in particular. I don't know, I just wonder, how do you think about that? And how do you take in these analyses?
I'm like not the person to ask, because like I get more and more frustrated with social media the older I get and the more time that goes on. I don't like being on it. I don't like being attached to my phone 24/7.
Yeah.
I don't like how, like, I was actually thinking about this recently, how like there was I don't know how to explain this, but how since I've been on social media, I now see things in a way that is curated, as in like, oh, that would be a nice Instagram story, or that picture would look cute in, on Pinterest or whatever. And I hate that I see things in that way, because I don't believe that's how life is meant to be experienced. At the same time, for the line of work that I'm in, being off of social media is like not a reasonable possibility right now. And we use social media in a way that keeps us so connected, as in like, I was off social media for like 3 weeks over the summer, like to take, I call it sabbatical. I'm sure that's like not a correct usage of the word, but like, I like to go off it for like extended periods of time. And I was like, in the time I was off it, I was coming back to school, and one of my friends like, oh, senior class committee event. And I'm like, what? Apparently senior class committee posts their events on Instagram because it would be too antiquated to have an email list. But like, I also just don't believe in like taking in everything on social media. Like, I believe you have to have blinders, you have to have filters, but at the same time, I believe that a lot of the time the discussion about social media and the discussion about like turning off the news is for people who want to kind of, I think it allows complacency. I think people are very often like, oh, I don't want to watch the news, I don't want to, know what's going on, everything's like going to shit, whatever, excuse my language, but like, knowing that things are going to shit is a responsibility that we hold living in this country. Like, I do not think it's appropriate to look away. And I worry that when we look away, we allow ourselves to go on in our like little lives and like go to class and, have that nice cup of coffee or go to yoga or whatever. And like, there are children on the other side of the world who are dying with my tax dollars. Like, you don't get to just look away and like go on with your life. That's I need to sit with that. We need to sit with that as a society. We need to like sit with the fact that we are all interrelated and we affect each other. And I think like, I refuse to give air to the idea that like we should just like stop watching the news because it's better for my mental health. Because at the end of the day, the person who's on the news is already suffering like more than you are to have the luxury to be watching it. And maybe that's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, but I also experience you to be also intentional and focused about where you get active. Like, you're holding those two things together. Right? What is your work to do? What are you attending? Where are you organizing?
Yeah, and there's I don't know how to explain it. I don't have the verbiage for it, but like, if I'm coming home from, whatever meeting at whatever time of night, or, getting off of, I went on a freedom ride a couple weeks ago, and when I tell you this to say that when I got back, I was like exhausted. And there was like the last thing I wanted to do was go like look at like the highlight reel that they put on socials, which was fabulous, by the way. But like the last thing I wanted to do was like be on socials and looking at that because I was tired. I'd been, up at all hours, like on the bus, literally. But like I can say like we went to Georgia, we did what we needed to do, and then we came home. And that's okay, I can turn my phone off. Okay. But like, if I'm not doing that work, that's the trade-off for being able to say like, ooh, I'm not gonna be on social media 24 hours a day. That, and also the fact that there's work to be done to enable other work to be done. Like, I'm very aware that like, my goal is to graduate. I can't get to my next step to do the work I wanna do without doing that. So if this is my goal right now, this is what I gotta do to do that. But at the same time, like, I'm like doing what I'm supposed to be doing to kind of like not earn, but like to get my relaxation. But it's not like I'm not doing anything and I just want to look away from the sake of this makes me feel bad. What you do with those feelings of this makes me feel bad is you get to work. And I worry that oftentimes when people are like, social media is this and, they're saying this and they're saying that, and everybody's like, they're on Twitter at the moment, like, catastrophizing about Trump's cabinet picks. And like, I worry that like the people who have time to be catastrophizing are not doing the work.
The question is about social media.
Yeah, and I also wonder, because you also really have that proximity to really young people.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was grown when social media started, right? And so I just think everything is nuanced, and I think that multiple things can be true. And I think social media there are parts of it that have been extraordinarily powerful. I remember in 2014, Ferguson, Missouri, and Michael Brown is killed and people take to the streets. And when the tear gas hits the protesters, there were tweets coming from Libya telling them to find milk. Tweets in a second. This is how you beat tear gas, coming from a war-torn Libya. We've seen it, we know it well. Find a McDonald's, find this, find milk, and it'll help you sort of navigate the space, right? That's a powerful thing. During the pandemic, though adults laughed about the rise of the TikTok dance, truth of the matter is it's probably a pretty powerful experience for a kid locked in his room or locked in a room to do a dance, and 10 days later see 10 million people doing the same dance knowing that they're not alone. I don't think that's anything to sneeze at, right? And like with all powerful things, even work, excess is dangerous, right? Excess is dangerous. There's a documentary called Abstract on Netflix, and it talks about the greatest designers in the country. And one of the episodes is the black man who invented the infinite scroll for Instagram. Said it's the biggest mistake he ever made. Because when Instagram started, back in the day, you had to go from page to page. You had to hit a button to go to another page of sort of stream, and then you go to the next page, and it sort of broke it up some. But then he, just as a design feature, created what we now know as the infinite scroll, and it changed the way that we interacted with this particular platform and all platforms that followed, right? And so, that's where I am with it, right? I know its benefits, and I know its detriment. And for my own life, by the way, I get so frustrated in the morning because I lose about an hour and a half. Right? I'm just like on there, and it's wild because I'm not even looking at anything.
Right.
Just doing, it's Pavlovian, right?
Yeah.
And I can't, it's like a chemical sort of weird thing happening to me, and I know it's happening and can't stop it. What a strange, strange experience. I can't pretend like that's not a thing. Yeah. And on the flip side, I'm able to cross-reference things that I do see on the news. So you have misinformation, disinformation, all that exists on all the platforms. The news has commercials, which means somebody is paying for it, right? Which means somebody gets to control whatever the news is, whether on whatever side of the aisle you're on, it is biased and skewed, right? We know this, hopefully. And so if that is the case, then there are moments where I need to cross-reference. So if I'm seeing something live on CNN and I can go on the internet and see it on the ground, If I can go on Instagram and say, I'm on the ground in the protest, and what they're reporting is not happening, because I'm looking at the spot, right, which so many of us have done, that's valuable. But me spending 25 hours looking at, well, sometimes looking at the dog video. I know cat videos made it famous, but the cat videos made it famous, but it's really the dog videos. And sometimes that's good for your mental health, but not for like 7 hours. You know?
So in this too, it is a terrifying and majestic and strange time to be alive, to be a human. We have to close, and I want to ask each of you, today, just now, what is making you despair? What brings you despair, and what gives you hope? I want to also explain that I don't use the hope. Yeah. Okay. And I don't use. To me, hope is a muscle. It's a choice. It is something you throw your life behind. It's action. It's not a feeling. It's not wishful thinking. It's not optimism. So I ask. So this hope is a muscular thing. And Jason, you don't have to tell us what you despaired about with your therapist today, but something else. What do you despair about? What makes you despair when you look out at the world, and in particular, this matter of being alive in this time and being in a young body?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a despair kind of guy.
Yeah,
and I know that. I'm just not. It's not because there aren't things to despair about, right? We get to pick and choose where we put our energy. I'm a let's go get it type of guy. I'm not. We could cry tomorrow, but today there's work to do. I can't. Despair gets in the way sometimes for me, right? For others, maybe it motivates them, but for me, I'm like, I see it like, okay. So to be clear, to me, the greatest issues in the world at this particular moment, if I had to pick only macro issues, it's going to be the environment, and for me, the global epidemic is actually under and ill literacy. Planet-wide. To me, one of the biggest reasons that the world is devastated, besides men in power, is a lack of language. Because if one can't process and synthesize language, it affects critical thinking skills. So we only look at it like, I can't read, and if I can't read, I can't know. No, it's bigger than that. If you can't read, it becomes harder to think. Because your brain can't decode the things it needs to decode because you haven't been in practice in doing so, right? And so those are the things that bring me great despair, because I think that they are linchpins for a lot of our stuff, right? And what brings me hope, young folks. Honestly, young folks bring me both despair and hope. I think. And I mean this, I think that younger generations, they bring me despair because they don't trust us. And they give me hope partially for the same reasons, to be honest.
Kessley, what makes you despair? What brings you hope?
Despair, I think, is the literacy thing. Really, I think about that a lot. But I worry a lot about the fact that the things that need to reach the people that they need to reach are not going to reach them. Not just because of illiteracy, but because I think we have a tendency to want to protect our relationships and avoid conflict instead of telling the truth. And if there's anything that my codes professor told me to get up here and start talking about codes, but if there's anything that the writers, the Ta-Nehisi Coateses and the Baldwins have taught me, it's that you have to tell the truth. And I worry that too many people know the truth and don't want to say it for their own comfort. And then things that bring me hope, my younger brothers bring me a lot of hope. They are really cool. And the young people and the fact that they care. Really.
That's awesome. Yeah. How old are they?
Well, the 18-year-old, I assume, just went to the bathroom because he was here. And then the other one is 11. And I was supposed to get you to sign a book for him, but I forgot to buy the books.
It's all good. I'll send you some books.
All right. Thank you, Kessley. Thank you, Jason. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Krista.
Jason Reynolds is a New York Times bestselling author of over 20 books for children and young adults. From 2020 to 2022, he served as National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Among many honors, he has received the Newbery, Prince, and Coretta Scott King Awards, and in 2024 was named a MacArthur Fellow. He's on the faculty at Lesley University for the Writing for Young People MFA program. Kessley Janvier is a senior at Georgetown University, majoring in history. She's former president of the Georgetown University NAACP. She has organized around reparations as part of Hoya's advocating for slavery accountability. She's also led efforts to promote climate justice, police accountability, and racial justice. Special thanks this week to Gillian Hubner, Ian Mancy, and Rabbi Rachel Gartner and Derek Goldman of Georgetown's Laboratory for Global Performance in Politics. This episode was produced by Chris Heagle, Zach Rose, Julie Seipel, Kayla Edwards, Tiffany Champion, Carla Zanoni, and Andrea Prevost. Our funding partners include the Hearthland Foundation, helping to build a more just, equitable, and connected America, one creative act at a time. The Fetzer Institute, supporting a movement of organizations that are applying spiritual solutions to society's toughest problems. Find them at fetzer.org. Calliopeia Foundation, dedicated to cultivating the connections between ecology, culture, and spirituality, supporting initiatives and organizations that uphold sacred relationships with the living earth. Learn more at calliopeia.org. And the Osprey Foundation, a catalyst for empowered, healthy, and fulfilled lives. On Being is an independent production of the On Being Project, based in Minnesota and New York City.